Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Bleav in Hawks episode. And we have a special guest with us from the ATL and 29th podcast, Glen Willis. Yes, sir. If you've listened to him before, you know he has great takes. I mean, I follow him on Twitter. I look at his tweets religiously when he talks about the Hawks, man. Just great insight and a different point of view than I think a lot of people give on Twitter and just all over, sometimes social media when talking about the team. So appreciate you coming on, Glen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's cold out here in Washington State. I'm in the Seattle area today, so I got my hoodie on, trying to stay warm and not jack up my electricity bill too high. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I'm doing well. It's nice, kind of long weekend here, and a great weekend to celebrate. Some good aspects of our history and all that sort of stuff, and watch some basketball today. It's nice that Atlanta, pretty reliably has a home game today, as seems appropriate to me. So look forward to that game. I know the last few have been rough, and I think fans don't know what to expect today, but I guess we'll watch and find out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially after the last two performances, I think a lot of people are interested to see, especially National Televised Game 2, how this goes. So today, Glen, we're just going to talk about the state of this team right now. I think a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on what's going on with this, with the roster, with the front office, the direction, everything, right? I'm sure you've talked about it on your pod. I'm sure, you've seen the discussion. I'm sure, I don't know if you've had time to look at the Athletic article that was released about the status of the team from what they're hearing as well. So I just want to get your overall assessment of it. And the first question I have is basically just what in your mind is the biggest reason why the Hawks are where they are right now in the season?
Yeah, so I think again, this is kind of me connecting the dots, we get to hear bits and pieces from different reporting and sourcing and all that sort of stuff, and then we get to try to kind of connect what we're hearing with what we're seeing and try to make sense of it. And for me, they just looked like an organization that is on the verge of making some roster changes to iterate them forward to having the kind of roster that will fit what Quin wants to do. And that's a pretty normal process to have at work after you make a coaching change and such. So, all the reporting suggests they tried really hard in the offseason to make a few trades and kind of shift things, weren't able to kind of make that happen. And so I think they're just, and I think as human beings, players feel that, know that. I think it impacts them. It's funny because when I watch them, I'm like, I don't really mean this in a judgmental way, but you'd like for them to navigate this period of adversity with, I don't know if the right word is a little more maturity, a little more composure, because their play is awful, right? The last whatever number of games, and it doesn't look like there's any reason to think they're going to turn the corner anytime soon, apart from maybe just kind of having a roster change happen all of a sudden, if that is actually on the precipice of happening, so to me it looks mental, it looks like it's impacting their energy, it's impacting their vibes, as the kids would say. And I think the organization knows they're about to pivot towards roster construction that lines them up for the future that they want to realize, and it's hard to be right in the middle of that. So that's my best guess of what's going on. They're better than their record, they're better than their statistical profile. They have a reasonable amount of talent. They should be at least a middle of the pack team in the Eastern Conference, at least in my view. But we could talk kind of more about what Quin's running on both ends and how that's impacting things and stuff like that. But I think it's mostly a mental kind of thing right now, with the team just kind of feeling like, yeah, some changes are coming, and it's a heavy kind of state to stay in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, when they brought him in, I think the biggest thing from what I got from the Hawks media day at the beginning of the year was that they expected a lot of internal improvement. They felt like Quin's system, to me, could elevate guys. Jalen is probably the one guy who has made the most improvement out of everybody over the past year, off season to now. And I think they expected that for other guys. But I think his system has actually shown that certain guys are not, some guys stick out. Like, I think a lot of people think Clint Capella sticks out like a sore thumb in the system, because I think this offense evolves the center more. And then you're seeing, oh, wait, Clint isn't that type of player, especially offensively, even though defensively, even though people say he's, kind of fell off a little bit, he's always been pretty solid there. So I guess my next question to you is talking about the scheme. Is it, we've heard them talk about communicating more on defense. We've heard them talk about, they were a team that gets a lot of steals. I think they're still top 5 in steals in the league. But they also give a lot of back cuts. Everybody knows you can back cut the Hawks to death and they can't stop it. They have trouble at the point of attack. Is it a player thing? Is it a scheme thing? Is it player and scheme? What have you seen for why the defense is just so inconsistent? Because I feel like over the last few weeks for these last 2 games and the Pacer game last Friday, the defense has had better performances, but still do we have those games where it's just complete stinkers?
Yeah, to me, the scheme that Quin is running is not a fit for the current roster, and it's a conundrum. I don't want that to sound like Quin is dumb. Quin's a very good NBA coach. He has a great track record, got a lot done in Utah, as we know. But the conundrum is, okay, I could win more games right now, conceptually, if we just play drop coverage. It lends itself more to what Clint's strengths are as your defensive anchor. It allows you to play maybe like AJ Griffin more, right? Because that's what he was able to play in last year and was stable enough defensively. Better fit for Sadiq, better fit for Bogey. When they're running their show coverage where the big is getting all the way up to the level of the screen, that leaves more space for your wings and your other players to defend behind that. And we know Sadiq, not the most kind of athleticism that you'd want to cover a lot of space. Bogey at this point in his career, kind of the same thing. And so, as fans, I don't know if the mindset is, man, just kind of run the stuff that fits this current roster and let's win some games. And Quin's and his staff might be, no, we need to start building towards what our ideation is of what we're going to run on both ends. And to me, like what he's running fits Okongwu well, fits Jalen well. I think it helps Trae some because you get more support up at the level of the screen. Other guards, it helps more as well. And so I think it's just like the classic conundrum. Like, do we pursue wins right now and potentially punt on starting this development process towards the things that we want to be doing next season or whenever, right? Or do we, how do we manage that? And it seems to me like Quin's like, no, we're going to run the stuff that we're building up toward, right? Jalen needs those reps. Okongwu needs those reps. Whatever other young guys, maybe, Lundy's getting a little bit of time here and there and stuff like that. And we need to see the other players in this system so we can get kind of the feedback and see who's working well, who's working a little, who's not working at all. And those feedback loops seem to be what the organization is prioritizing. Frustrating for fans to watch, I know, because like I said, the defensive scheme is not a fit for their current rotation personnel at all, in my view.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you mentioned getting reps to guys like Okongwu and Jalen. And I remember a tweet you made about one of the reasons why sometimes people want Bogey out there in the closing lineup and he doesn't. And you mentioned maybe it's to help Jalen get those reps. Because I said on my pod that if you have Bogey out there, even though Jalen is one of our top 3 players on the floor, I feel like Bogey is somewhat the third option. I feel like, if Trae and DeJounte need to get the ball to someone, they're going to give it to him. And so if you take him off, then it makes Jalen have to be that third person, which was good for his development. So you talked about also his growth within the system. Can you just talk about Jalen for a minute and just what you've seen from last year to this year, the confidence that, we see the talent. He's one of those guys I say you look at and you can tell he just has what I call juice to him. He just has juice, and I think that's something the Hawks have been lacking is a player with juice outside of Trae when he's on. So can you just talk about your assessment of Jalen Johnson and where he is right now?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's, if someone asks me, like, what's the ceiling? It's like, how do you even define a limit? Like, I mean, the easy scoring, the easy transition, the athleticism, the size, and the speed, and the ball skill. I mean, it's just a very unique kind of combination of, maybe last year we called it a raw tool set. That's not a fair way to talk about it anymore. It's becoming more and more refined, right? And to me, it's like, as I try to think about, okay, the Hawks are down to 10 seconds to go, put 5 guys on the court and Bogey's not out there. And I'm trying to think, like, why is Bogey not out there? Like, Bogey's your best shot maker easily the best shot maker on the team. And it has to be, in my mind, it has to be to give Jalen those opportunities. Like Bryce, one thing I'm looking for is sometime this season, are the Hawks going to run a play for Jalen as the primary option in that situation? Like, is that coming, right? And I'd be interested to see like how soon that might happen, right? But if Jalen is out there with Trae and Bogey, I mean, the other players are going to kind of lean on those guys as creators, shot makers, etc. And I think Quin is like, you know what, a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, Jalen needs to be a 1A or 1B for every single possession that we have. And so we're going to kind of force, use a force function around him kind of being in that role and say like, hey, you're our guy that we're going to kind of run stuff through. I mean, Trae is a wonderful offensive player. It can be hard for smaller guys to kind of get the shot that you want at the end of the game at times and stuff like that. Maybe Quin's going to run a lot of kind of different kind of two-man action between Trae and Jalen, and that, depending upon how the defense reacts to whatever that might be, kind of go that route. So, I mean, defensively, he's still kind of learning screen navigation. He's still kind of learning how to play at the point of attack, but he has such natural athleticism and length that even when he makes a mistake or he's a little slow on the technique, he can recover in ways that guys who don't have his kind of athletic kind of gifts can. So to me, like, Jalen is the, I don't know, an overused term, the X factor on like where the Hawks should be a year from now, 2 years from now. Is he reach all-star level where he's like an all-star year in, year out? I think he has the foundational skills to kind of maybe get to that level, but a lot of that comes with repetitions, him having the right aggressive mindset. He kind of looks like more of a facilitator sometimes, like he wants to kind of be a passer. And there are times it's like, Jalen, the guy in front of you is like 6'4", just go put the ball right in the rim. And it takes some time for him to kind of recalibrate that. But to me, it's like, apart from Trae, when's the last time we had a young player that was kind of this exciting to watch kind of forming into something? Is it, do we go back to Josh Smith? Where do we go? Where do we go to that? So it's, despite all the frustration of how terrible things look and feel right now, I think he's a reason for Hawks fans to kind of stay optimistic and want to continue watching this team play right now.
Yeah, definitely. People feel like he's in most improved player of the year candidacy. He's done great for this team. He's done a lot of good things. And I think people, like I said, people are trying to figure out what his ceiling is. Obviously, you'll hear comparisons to LeBron, comparisons to Scottie Pippen, just different guys like that because of how good people think he can be. And some people wonder at some point if he will be the best player on the team, even with Trae here at some point, if he reaches his potential. So that's something that I think is going to be very interesting to keep an eye on moving forward and trying to see what that ends up looking like. But now let's get into, just the rumors around the team. Obviously, trade rumors, huge. Big person in that trade rumor, DeJounte Murray. It seems like the Hawks have a lot of people who are interested in DeJounte. I've said that, it's not easy for DeJounte because he came here basically becoming a 2, even though he's been a 1 most of his career. Like, it's like a lot of these guys could probably play 2 if needed, but like that's not their natural position. And, I think people are kind of like, all right, well, what are we going to get back for him? What is that going to look like? If we move off him, what are we going to get for him? And then what is the plan at the 2? Let's say if you get like the Lakers, get Austin Reeves, like, okay, you would assume he'd be your starting 2. But let's say you don't. Let's say you don't, you get maybe other positions and picks. Where do the Hawks maybe go at that 2 spot? I've said, do you put AJ in there? Do you give him a shot finally? Is this Kobe? Is because they said that he's kind of quote unquote untouchable, quote unquote. Where do you see the future of that spot next to Trae if they do indeed move off of DeJounte?
Well, to me, the most obvious answer is Bogey, but Quin has wanted to use Bogey on the second unit to sustain some offense while Trae's off the floor. There are ways to kind of adjust your rotation around that. Is it AJ? Like right now, that doesn't seem like a likely thing that Quin would go to because he hasn't been playing him, right? And so, and I suspect that's because of the defensive kind of complexity of what they're trying to do out there, and AJ's just not quite ready to kind of perform on that end. But if you look at the Hawks record, it's like, okay, are we nearing a point where we just got to play the young guys because we're so like behind in the standings that there's no reason to try to completely salvage the season. I don't think that they're there yet, but you wonder, like, how close do they feel they are to the point of like just prioritizing development for this year, right? Quin's doing that with scheme. And so for me, it's Bogey. I mean, part of it does depend on who comes back. Is it Austin Reeves? Is it D'Angelo Russell? And Russell will probably start. I mean, Russell's a professional player. He's not perfect for what the Hawks want to do and stuff like that. But, but then now there's rumors that the Nets are trying to get involved, and other teams as well. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what they can make happen. I know a lot of fans want to see a trade happen right now because the team is just looks like almost not present in their own games, right? It's hard to watch, I think, for everyone, right? And they want to change, and it kind of feels like a change is needed to kind of get them back into a better headspace and all that sort of stuff. But for me, I think what the Hawks front office needs to do, ideally, is cultivate a market for DeJounte and get at least 2 or 3 teams feeling like they need to beat the offer of the other team, and that's how you kind of maximize that. I mean, some front offices would just be like, this is so bad, we just got to make a change now. Our team's in such a bad mental headspace and all that sort of stuff. But I think big picture, you want to maximize the return you get, and that might take a little bit more time.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like I said, you said that it feels like they're in the bad headspace. Because I've said I've watched Hawks games the last few games, and I felt like the energy's been different. It feels like they're kind of just playing. They're just kind of doing their job. It doesn't feel like there's a mission or a goal. I feel like when I watch them, especially in these last 2 games, and it's weird.
They're not competing. I mean, in the way that, like, even like say the first 20, 25 games of the year or whatever, even when they would be down like 14, 16 points in the third quarter or whatever, they were still working the process, attacking the task, just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And they got back and they've won a few games that way and stuff. That good process and that good competitiveness and that just sticking to the task, that has disappeared in the last week, 2 weeks or whatever. That's gone, right? And that's, to me, that's really bad. And I don't know how fixable that is with like just make a trade and go ahead and make it the changes to happen and all that sort of stuff. But that's really bad habits form from periods like this that you don't want, right? And that's where my concern is for the team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's been tough. And I always said too, it's been weird because they had the good win over Oklahoma City, even though fourth quarter issues, especially in the clutch, but they won that game. Same thing with the Sixers in overtime. You feel like those are games that you can build off of. You always hear coaches say this is something we can build off of, and then the next game they just come out flat, and you're just like, the last game didn't happen. And so it does make me worry about, like, okay, what's happening? Because obviously here's the thing: we know agents, these players know what's going on. I feel like they know if they're in trade talks, like they're just like, hey, like, listen, like, you're in this talk, you could be moved. And I wonder, just, you're human, you're out on the floor. It's almost like I said this in my last show. I was like, how would you feel if, like, your boss was like, yeah, you're gonna be fired in 2 weeks. Are you gonna come into work now every day and put out 110%? Because you're about to leave. And I think maybe that is what could be happening right now with the team and why they've been going through this lag. Now, hopefully against the Spurs, they don't, lag. I mean, you're on national television, hopefully they come out and play, closer to the way they've been playing like earlier in the season. But that transitions me into my next point, because the thing people also forget with this team is this team, especially from a starting lineup perspective, has not been healthy in like 2 months. Either Jalen or DeAndre's been out. It was Jalen. Then as soon as Jalen gets back, it's been DeAndre. DeAndre, I know a lot of people are not the biggest fan of him. I feel like I think he's a good player. I don't think he's special. I don't think he's anything that's like crazy. I think he's good. I mean, he's shooting a career high from 3. I mean, he's just shooting like 40%. So I guess he's in trade talks, but I would like to see him back now, because it feels like we haven't seen the starting lineup a lot together because of that. what are your impressions of DeAndre Hunter? And because if I think some people are like, man, it feels like we need him back right now.
Yeah, they do, and it's kind of funny the circumstances that make his presence more important. Even though a lot of fans don't want to think of him that way and find him frustrating, and he does frustrating things pretty regularly, but he also does a lot of things that I feel like go unnoticed. Like he's an exceptional defensive organizer, and when Clinton and Yuck are up the floor, you need a 3 or 4 that can organize everyone else, right? John Collins, that was probably his best quality, functioning as a defensive organizer, being a weak side organizer and helper. And DeAndre is at that same level as an organizer. And so, like, Sadiq doesn't do that. It's not Bogey's role. Bogey's a guard, right? And so they're missing that. I think Jalen is kind of growing into that, but ideally you have someone who's just a little bit more experienced, like JC and Hunter. And so they miss that tremendously. And when they had neither Hunter nor Jalen, like Quin did revert back to some drop, here and there, and they played a little bit better. But I think as soon as I got one of those two guys back, he went straight back to getting the big up to the level of the screen. Hunter is critical to this team having some sort of defensive floor that keeps them in games, right? He's not a stopper. He's not an all NBA defender in terms of the kind of defenders you think are in that category. I think his defensive value is really misunderstood by a lot of people that may, casually watch games or just listen to the national narratives or whatever. And that's all fine. There's nothing wrong with anyone watching the game that way. I'm not being critical at all. But a lot of his defensive value comes in the nuanced areas of the game: communication, organizing. He's an exceptional help defender. And they miss that for sure right now because Sneak is terrible at that stuff. When both of those guys are down, are you playing Seth Lundy now? Like how, I mean, he's learned a lot at College Park. I think they're getting great defensive results down in College Park. So hopefully that's helped. Garrison Matthews is one more undersized defender. If he's the guy that's in the rotation, Patty Mills, kind of what's going on here. So to me, they miss Hunter tremendously. In terms of like, just even if Hunter could make them like, I don't know, the 22nd ranked defense in the league instead of 28th, right? That's probably worth 5 wins on the season, and if you have DeAndre and Jalen both capable of playing 36, 37 minutes, maybe you can get to 19, and win 3 more, and that's a big difference whether you're trying to get to 10 in the play-in or trying to maybe have a chance to get to 6 or, whatever. So I think Hunter is a very important player, but, it does seem like he misses a lot of games, and that's not a character. It drives me crazy. Some Hawks fans talk about like that, like it's a character flaw. It's not. That's just his body, and some things you can't control. Fans don't know whether he's like putting all his effort into rehab and doing all the. Why would we think he's not doing that? He's a competitive guy, So Hunter's incredibly important in their current form, even though there's a lot of rumors that suggest the Hawks are kind of looking to potentially kind of send him out in a trade that kind of brings back a different kind of mix of skills too.
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, he's one of the 3. Clint also is involved in those discussions. They're talking about potentially attaching him to potentially a DeJounte deal if that ends up happening, which they say is close, but we'll see. We'll be on trade watch. But you brought up something about they're playing Garrison, they're playing Patty, and I this is one thing I've pointed out that I think has been hurting the team too, with the injury to either any of the top 8, is that the Hawks, when they go 9 deep, a lot of nights they're barely getting production from their 7th. I mean, not their 7th, but like their 8th and 9th guy. And I feel like that has hurt the team because I've said it puts a lot of pressure on Trae, DeJounte, Bogey, all of them to be good. And then Clint Capella is not a offensive guy. I mean, if he has a great night put back wise, then great. But like realistically, you only have 6 guys, I guess, in your top 8 with Hunter out who can get buckets, and then Bay's 3-point shot is gone missing for some reason. So now it's like it just feels like they're I feel like they'll get off to these hot starts, and then I always say the problem is that we're expecting them just to stay hot the whole game if they're going to maintain that, because they have not shown the ability defensively to just rely on that, even though their shot maybe starts to not fall. It's like the Hawks always have to say even out. They'll be hot, then they'll go cold. Or if they're cold, they'll be hotter later. They always even out there. They just always even out in some capacity. And so I feel like that's hurt the team when you sometimes get 3 points and then 0. And it's like you only got 3 points from that. Because I said in the Pacers game from this past Friday, I said the Pacers, when I looked at the first half, they had 8, 9, 6, 7 from guys on the bench. And that's just the bench, not even the starters. So they're getting multiple guys who can score the ball. And obviously they're one of the top offenses in the league for that reason. So if they make trades, is it important for them to get guys back to just fill out that rotation that can be productive? Obviously, we know there's a reason why they're 8th or 9th on the bench, but at least can they do something if called upon? Or is that maybe more of just they need to play Lundy, they need to play Kobe, they need to play those guys, let them be the end of the bench, and then just let them develop from that whenever the minutes they get?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would help them if they got just stable veterans that could kind of play in those rotation spots, 8, 9, 10, whatever, as needed. And also if they are good teammates, just good organizational guys in that. I think at some point this season, Lundy's going to start playing pretty regularly, which means potentially bumping that veteran the rotation. Can that guy handle that well, right? It's, et cetera. So I think just getting good organizational players that can function in the basic sense of what things that Quin wants would be helpful. The top of the roster, the upper part of the roster is really kind of what matters the most. But I said before, like, I appreciate how they approached this last draft, because I mean, how many years have we watched them just like be not that serious, like in the second round? I think Lundy's going to be a good player. I think Gay is going to be a good player, and I think those guys, like in a year or two, or what have you, they're going to be very reliable, productive players for this team. But that's going to take some time, right? And where they are with their depth reflects, to a degree, at least one aspect, is that they weren't taking their development kind of roster spots that seriously until maybe this past offseason. So yeah, getting back good organizational guys, I think, would be helpful. The key is, what do you put next to Trae? And I think the conversation now, as you kind of hinted at earlier, what do you put next to Trae and Jalen? What's that third kind of complementary piece that makes the most sense? I think this organization would love to get Pascal Siakam. I think they've been pursuing him hard. I think all the reporting suggests that. I think he would fit amazingly. But, it's, to me, I think it's just too much risk, because Pascal's like, I'm not committing to sign an extension. And then, how much do you kind of give up for that? But so, I mean, to be really good, you have to hit the top 2-3 spots on the roster just right. You have to hit the depth just right. You have to have the right buy-in. You have to guys that are willing to play together, be coachable, and compete and kind of work through adversity and stuff. And like I said, it's what's so frustrating is a lot of that was present the first 20, 25 games, and it's just kind of disappeared. I mean, you mentioned that Philly game, right? No Embiid. And when Maxey fouled out, the Sixers really couldn't get anything on offense except through kind of Tobias, and that's not really what you want Tobias doing. Jalen and Yeka were phenomenal in that overtime, and that felt like a glimpse into the future of, like, this is what it's going to look like to kind of close games whenever we kind of get there, and stuff like that. But I mean, the Hawks are in that phase, like, who can we get to put in that kind of core 3 guys, and is that sending out salary in exchange for contracts that end sooner, so that you maybe have some in a year, some cap space to work with, or some maneuverability to work with, or some flexibility to work with? That's the big kind of open thing right now for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that, front office has to figure out. I know the front office is feeling some pressure from fans, just, and everybody, and the wrestlers, and just all of that, from the way this team is built. But I'll give you 2 more questions and I'll let you go, Glenn. First one is about Trae. You mentioned earlier about the buy-in. Trae in the last game mentioned, buying into Quin, and we need guys who are going to listen. And so people were like, is that like a shot, or is that like a signal that maybe he's saying not everybody is bought in? And speaking of Trae, what have you seen from him this season? It feels like, especially defensively, I think people, if you watch the team, have seen some of the defensive plays he's made late in games and how impactful he can be sometimes on both ends. Yes, he has those games, like the last few games haven't been great, and he has the injury, and people are wondering how hurt is he and everything like that. But what have you seen from Trae Young this season? Do you feel like this is his best season he's had? Do you feel like this has he made a lot of growth this season more than maybe in other seasons? What are you seeing from Trae Young this season?
Yeah, I think this is his best season so far. And we could talk about kind of the different aspects of where he's improved. I think one thing I would call out is just his leadership. I think he's been more vocal, and I think he is speaking to kind of the messaging that really needs to come from the leader. We could kind of try to kind of break down the statement he made after the last game, and it's probably unfair to try to do that. But he's clearly supporting what Quin is trying to get his team to do, and saying this is what we need to do. I believe in it. I believe in Quin, etc. And he also, people want to say, oh, was he calling people out? I mean, he also said this is going to take time, right? Which to me that feels like it's a little supportive of his teammates, in that sense as well. But it does also feel like there was a message in there that maybe there's one or two guys on the roster that he feels like is not buying in and not conforming to the kind of things. We can only kind of speculate. I'll just say, like I said, it felt like that messaging might have been present in kind of the broader statement that he made there. So leadership is there. The shot making has been better. To me, it looks like he's clearly been working on the jump shot. That's something you put a lot of effort into, and that makes a big difference. Him making shots is a really, really big deal, and creates one more dimension of their offense that's not there when he's not hitting his pull-ups, whether that's from right on the 3-point line or a good 8 feet back, which is or whatever it's common there. And then the other part is just things he's doing off the ball, like screen. You'll see him back screening, you'll see him cross screening, you'll see him using pin downs to kind of get leverage on his defender and stuff. So he's just become a more versatile guy. When he was younger, I think that they just leaned really heavily on middle pick and roll because he's one of the greatest ever in the history of the league to at that action. But as a guy who's 6 foot tall and you're playing 82 games and then getting into the playoffs, I mean, it's funny if you think about it. Defensively, teams organize mainly around stopping pick and roll, right? If we talk about kind of, we're going to play this defense, or what are you doing at the point of the ball screen? How's everyone else responding and stuff like that? And so everyone's kind of organized for that, which is why that Quin wants to create more variety in what's going on there. And so to me, like I said, you mentioned the defensive effort that's showing up all the time. And you'll hear fans on Twitter say, oh, he picks the spots. Yeah, no kidding. Go look at his offensive usage. You want him to be Tony Allen on defense every single that. I mean, he has to pick his spots. If you go watch Damian Lillard play, he picks his spots. So the people will be like, "Oh, Steph Curry." Okay, Steph Curry is an outlier of outliers, right? And it took Steph 6-7 years to kind of get to the point where he had developed into that kind of defensive performer. So to me, the defense is on a good trajectory. When they hopefully become a serious team like a contender, will they need more? Yes, they'll need more, right? But he is on his way in that department, I think. So the improved defense, the investment on defense, the investment in leadership, the shot making, and then just his ability to create shots for teammates is, I mean, he's one of the best 5 offensive players in the league, in my view. And and it's, don't make me blame the other 4, right off the top of my head, because I'll make some people mad. But you probably see it too, Bryce. After bad losses, the Hawks need to trade Trae. And I told someone the other day, I said, you know what? In the modern NBA, you win with offense. You have to have good enough defense. You get rid of Trae, it might take you literally 20 years to find another guy that has his kind of offensive capability. So be careful what you wish for. To me, everything is built on Trae, and he needs the right pieces around him. And I think the Hawks organization knows that they're not there yet. But I'm completely satisfied with what he's doing this year. The last few games have been rough shooting wise. He's not physically right now. I don't know like everything that's going on physically, but he looks like a guy who's not physically right to me. So I'm not so much worried about that. Apart from like, does he need to sit for a few days or skip a game or two to kind of get that shoulder better and whatever else he might have going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something, like I said, we kind of saw. And, Trae, like I said, has made a lot of growth this year. I think you can tell if he's bought in, the support of Quin, everything. I think that just kind of shows you. Because I think before, you can say maybe with other coaches, he wasn't, I guess, bought in completely with them, but this guy, like Quin, is like a guy. He's like, yeah, I Bleav in what he's trying to do, which is important when your best player is doing that, and that can set the tone for the entire team. But speaking on Quin, my last question to you, sir, is just how has Quin Snyder done so far? I know he's had to deal with a lot of different things. I know a lot of people are with the struggles. Someone has to be blamed, and so some people are looking at Quin like, oh, he's not doing the right rotations. He's not making the right decisions. He's not. Why is he doing this with certain guys? What has been your overall, I guess, report card on Quin Snyder so far in his first full season up to this point?
I mean, Quin is a very good coach, in my opinion. And his track record kind of speaks for itself and supports that. To me, I wish Quin would sit down one time and do just an honest 10 minutes with the media on what he's prioritizing right now. I don't want to single Quin out because almost no NBA coach will be that transparent with kind of what their priorities are, and such. But if he's focusing on where they want to be 2 years from now, and he just said that, I think fans would have more understanding of kind of what the rationale is for the current decisions around rotation, who's playing, why isn't Onyeka starting yet, et cetera, all that sort of stuff, right? And I think that because Quin, being like almost every NBA coach, is cautious with how much he conveys, what his philosophy is, what his priorities are right now, and all that sort of stuff, I think fans have to kind of deal with this vacuum of information, and fans have to kind of try to figure that out. So I think Quin was a great hire. It exceeded my expectations. I think that when they went from Lloyd Pierce to Nate, I mean, I thought that was risky from the very beginning, just because I thought Nate's offensive philosophy doesn't really work for what Trae needs to do, and of course the offense regressed, after their Eastern Conference Finals run and all that stuff. So I think Quin is perfect for Trae, and I think this is a great situation. I think where people struggle to be like, well, what about their record? And what about like how terrible they're playing right now? Is Quin not accountable for that? Sure, the head coach is always accountable for the way the team's playing, the results, and all that sort of stuff. But if Quin and his staff are looking 12 months down the timeline, or 18 months, or whatever that is, and would just say that, I think fans would have an ability to kind of connect more with that being what the priority is right now. And absent that message being put out there, fans don't know how to respond. And I understand the frustration. I understand the angst. I understand why fans on Twitter say, I can't watch this team anymore. It's been a really rough watch the last few games, right? And so, but I still think, to me, I think big picture, they don't have the roster construction they need. They got to work towards that. You can't force the timeline on that, and in most cases, right? And I think big picture, they have the right plan. It's just going to take time for them to execute that plan. And I wish they were more competitive than they've been a few of the games recently right now. But I think Quin is prioritizing the big picture, and I think that that's the right thing to do, because, I mean, honestly, right now, if you look at the record, like, who cares if they win 44 instead of 39 games, or whatever range you want to put out there? What really, really matters is next year, can they put a team on the floor that might be able to win 50 games? Right. They're not going to do that this year, obviously. Right. And so the big picture is the priority, is as best I can tell. I wish Quin would and could just kind of say that plainly one time.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's just like I said, it's part of the growth. It's part of development. That's one thing they want to prioritize when they hired Quin, was development and accountability and everything. So, it's a work in progress, and they'll continue to work towards that. So overall, we'll have to see how that goes, and we'll have to see what moves are made. And then we'll be able to reassess this team once that happens. But I appreciate the time you took out to be on the show, Glenn. I appreciate you giving me your insight on the Hawks right now. Let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, the podcast is ATL and 29. So Kevin Chenard and I put out a couple, 2-3 a week. My work schedule has been kind of demanding, so really love having Tyler jumping back in. It's been fun, I think, to kind of have him back in the mix over there, and I greatly appreciate and enjoy Tyler's contributions there. So, yeah, and then on Twitter at Willis_Glen, I do some technical breakdowns of how they're defending, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, all that sort of stuff, and just like engaging in conversation. I mean, as I like to say all the time, none of my takes and opinions are precious. Anyone can challenge them. I'm happy to talk with people who have different ideas and different views and all that sort of stuff, especially as long as we keep it kind of friendly and fun and respectful and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, if you want to talk Hawks, come find me on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it these days, and check out the pod. And Bryce was like, you're doing great work here. I hope everyone will support you here as well. And I think you're just always thoughtful with things that you're putting out on Twitter, around what the Hawks are going on. So it's great to have you as being kind of one more really thoughtful kind of voice in the conversation. So I want to, pat you on the back for that and let you know that I appreciate you.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that, Glenn, man. You too, man. Great work you've been putting out, man. For sure. It feels like for a while it was like I would see you on social, and it's like, it's just like, I want to talk to that guy. I brought him on the show one day, so I'm glad we were able to do this and actually have this happen, man.
Absolutely.
But like I said, definitely appreciate you, man. But hey, guys, that was your Bleav in Hawks podcast. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. See you next time.